Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar. My name's Rob. I'm part of the recruitment and marketing team here at Now Teach. Behind the scenes, we've got Joe, who's working really hard on the technology, keeping it all up to speed. We also have Wendy and Rachel in the background on hand to answer any questions that might come your way. I'll give you some insight into how to answer or ask those questions in a few moments' time. And I'm delighted to be here this evening with Francis, one of our Maths Now teachers. He's in his ECT year, and we'll do our best to answer some questions about all these acronyms that I'm sure I'll be firing at you. But hot-footing his way from some ECT training, early careers teacher training, and Kate, who supports our Now teachers during their training year and beyond, who's very kindly joined us this evening to give an overview of the Now Teach network and the support that we provide as a charity to career changers as they go through teacher training on into their career as a teacher. With regards to tonight's session, thank you for joining. Hopefully the weather is a lot better where you are than it has been with me today. I'm glad we missed the hot spell last week. That could have done a little bit of damage to the numbers, but delighted that we've got 100 plus of you that have joined this evening. So we will do our best to answer your questions and provide as much insight into Now Teach as we can do this evening. We know most of you will likely be going through to join teacher training in September. Some of you might already be members of Now Teach. Others, there'll be plenty of opportunity for you to register during or after the webinar, and we'd love to be able to support you on your journey, your career transition, and your journey through teaching. But before we go any further, we'd love to know a little bit more about you. So Joe's very kindly popped up a poll, and you'll see the poll here that will be right in front of you. If you don't mind taking a few minutes to complete that, it'd be really helpful for us to understand and start to position some of the questions and some of the content, but also any follow-up that we're able to provide to you off the back of this to understand what you'd be interested in and how we can best tailor that content. It's wonderful. Thank you very much. Great. Okay. So the main question we would like to cover tonight is why join Now Teach? We appreciate you may wonder if you really want to join a further organisation when you've already got a school, a training provider, a university, you've got exam certificates to find in the loft, you've got budgets to work through, you've maybe got some subject knowledge enhancement exams that you need to go through, you've got inductions coming up. The simple answer is that Now Teach is just not more work. It's not more requirements. It's about connections and confidence that you can gain to help you thrive in your new exciting career. So to make sure we can answer all of your burning questions, you will find a Q&A box. To avoid confusion, this is hopefully clearly labelled as it is on my end, Q&A, not the box labelled chat. Our team are on hand to answer your queries at the back end. Anything that's particularly specific to you, the team will be able to answer. When there's some themes that are coming across that a number of you are asking, I will fish those questions out, maybe ask them to Francis or to Kate or address them myself, just to make sure we're covering off everything that we can do. For any questions that we can't answer, you'll have our email address, and we'd love to hear from you off the back of this and carry on our conversations a little bit further. The purpose of this event is to share about more about being part of Now Teach Network, both during your training and for as long as you are teaching. And we'll do our best to cover as many aspects of this as possible, but I'm sure we won't be able to cover everything in a great deal of detail, but we will delve into the inner workings of Now Teach and how we can support you and our charitable purpose to support career changes to make an impact in teaching, and how we can collectively work to make that happen for you. Before we begin, there's a lovely film that we'd love to show you. This is from our conference in 2023 and has got some of our network members talking about their experiences as part of Now Teach.
Even the teachers in the staff room are curious as to why someone at my stage of life have actually changed into teaching. And what I love about Now Teach is that we don't need to question each other's purpose for becoming teachers.
And so having the support of Now Teach, which is an organisation which is made up of people like me, has been really, really helpful through my training year and beyond. And I think will be part of it, of my future career.
The most important thing really is you're just not alone. You have that network of like-minded people that make you feel that you made the right decision, really.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Joe. Interestingly, a couple of our network members on there. Charles used to work as a director in marketing at Arsenal, so he's been celebrating over the last week. As has Roland, who grew up in Croydon, working for a chemistry organisation before he moved to Greater Manchester. But he grew up a Crystal Palace fan, so we seem to have been picking up quite a few trophies across the course of the last few weeks. Brilliant. Well, enough from me. I'd like to introduce you to Francis. Francis is one of our Now teachers, and has very kindly agreed to join us this evening to give you an overview of his experience as a career changer. So, Francis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rob. So I'm Francis, and I suppose it's probably worth me just quickly outlining my journey into teaching, and perhaps bits of that will feel slightly familiar. At the age of 17, I left school, joined the Royal Navy, and had a phenomenal 23 years working as an engineer in the Royal Navy, traveling the world, getting paid to do all the awesome things that comes with, both as an engineer and more broadly in sort of leadership and training roles. And I eventually got to the stage where I was ready to move on. I'd done all the exciting bits, and I couldn't face being in an office for another 20 years. And I took quite a long time trying to step back and work out what to do next. And I kept coming back to what I really enjoyed was the training jobs I'd done, working with young people, being out and about helping people, not stuck behind a desk. And it kept coming back to the sort of thought of becoming a maths teacher. And what I then did as I was investigating different career options was spend some time in schools, and after about 3 or 4 school visits and talking to probably 10, 15, 20 different people about teaching, I began to get a picture of what I thought teaching was, and it began to really get a feel for what my different options to get into it were, what it was likely to be like on a day-to-day basis. And I started sort of seriously investigating it through Now Teach and get into teaching through the government scheme, that really helped me kind of hone in on what I needed to do next to actually apply for it, where I wanted to train, and think it through. And I think throughout all that, a lot of it was talking to people and hearing things enough times that you realize that it wasn't just the anomaly, that actually that was, if 8 out of 10 people tell you something, you begin to believe actually that really is it. And both the good, the and some of the challenging aspects of teaching. And a lot of people are really good at being very honest with me and saying, "You sure that you want to do this?" And I'm really glad they were, because there are points where, it has been tricky, and it's been good to have people push me to really think it through before I went into it. But actually then with that support, I really found a training provider near me. I did a PGCE starting in 2024, and that was with a uni, but in school almost all the time. And did a year of that training, so that was 2024 to 2025. And then last year, finished that, and started my first proper job at the age of 42, starting a new career. And that phenomenal, slightly weird feeling of walking into a classroom on your own, with everything being down to you, nobody else in the background, you're no longer training. And it was busy from September last year through to now. But I've just come from a week of half term into the final 6 weeks of the summer term, feeling quite settled, pretty confident, feeling like I know my way around, I know my job, and I suppose really quite looking forward to next year, where I'll be in my 2nd year. I'll no longer be the newest teacher in the school, and actually I almost feel like I'm getting towards that point of my career transition being complete, that there was a sort of 3 or 4 year period where I decided I was going to leave the Navy, through to, I suppose, about now, where I feel settled after my first real year as a teacher on my own. And it's quite nice in a way to be getting through that journey, and coming to a new normal, as it were. I think for me, it's been the network both through Now Teach, through people I've met at my PGCE, through friends who were already teachers, that's helped keep me sort of on a bit of a level through all that, because I think it really does have its ups and downs. I think the highs are awesome when you get positive feedback from kids. Teenagers are brutally honest. So when you get like positive feedback, there's a real kind of buzz that comes from that. But they're brutally honest if you don't do a good job as well. And so I think that's where the highs and lows come from. When you know things are clicking, when the classroom's buzzing, when people are getting a concept, when they're positive, and that's a spiral. And vice versa. Not every lesson goes like that, but I think that's where it's good to be able to talk to someone and chat to people and hear their experiences and realize that we all have ups and downs. That particularly in those early days, if you've only taught 5 lessons and you have a really bad one, 1 in 5 lessons you've ever taught is awful. But actually, at that early stage, it's great when you can talk to people who know what it's like, and people who've gone from being pretty successful in their original career to being right back at the sort of first rung of the ladder again. And I think for me, that's been really good sort of steadying influence, riding through those sort of ups and downs to where I am now. And I've really enjoyed the conversations I've had since. A lot of people get in touch on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, you're the guy who left the Navy and went into teaching." I'm thinking of doing a similar thing, and I'm really enjoying now being sort of the other side of that and helping people think through that same journey. Hopefully that's sort of roughly what you wanted as an intro, Rob. I'm happy to take any questions or expand as required.
That's wonderful, Francis. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think I'm going to fire a couple of questions at you, if I may, before I bring Katie in, who will give an overview on the Now Teach network. I just wondered, Francis, what surprised you the most about and coming towards the end of your first year? What surprised you the most about being a teacher?
I think to me it's still. I came from my previous job looking at standardizing a lot of things within the Royal Navy, standardizing across UK Armed Forces, and standardizing across NATO. So we were trying to globally set standards and do things the same way. What I found both daunting and kind of exciting about teaching is that there isn't that same drive for standardization. So actually there are different ways of doing things, different one classroom to the next, the one school to another. I've worked in the 3 closest schools to my house, all of them being really different, and that's astounded me actually. And I think the benefit of that is there's real scope for you to find a school that aligns with you, and then even within that framework of the school, to identify your style as a teacher. And I think my style is different with different classes. You know, I will teach a year 8 top set differently to how I'll teach bottom set year 9, and the way you're going to engage them and things. So I think that's the bit that I had underestimated, was the sheer range of styles of schools, teachers, and even within a teacher yourself, your own styles.
Yeah, because every school's different, right? Every school's got slightly different cohorts, got slightly different approaches, maybe to behavior management, to how they develop the curriculum, to the personalities and the culture and the community that it's moved up, that's kind of grown up with.
I think absolutely, and I think something that you bring a lot. I think as a career changer, I mean, you bring a lot as a maths teacher. We're nationally short of teachers of a lot of subjects, and there's an element of when you get to the end of your training and you're looking for a job. I think the school was pretty honest. They said, look, you've got to choose us as well. They realized that actually, it's about finding the right fit, and that you as an individual want to find a school that you're going to be comfortable in. So I think that's something we're probably, aware of if you've got a bit of a background in another field, what to look for in an employer. What is it that you want? And trying to find that alignment between your principles and the place you're going to work.
Absolutely. Maybe a couple more questions. I'm just interested in your interest in maths. So was that an easy choice to make in your subject? Are you naturally going towards it, or was there other things that you maybe considered?
It's almost hard to explain. I think maths was just always, and I look back at my school results, and actually maths was always my strongest subject. I've always quite enjoyed it, but I think what it's really down to is I've always enjoyed being at the center of things. I've always really enjoyed being working on a ship as in the marine engineering department, where we've got to keep the plant running, where everything that happens on board is pretty linked to us. And I really enjoy that about maths, the fact that it's ultimately a subject everyone's going to be studying, that has got links to practically every other subject. And I think there's just something about that interconnection that I've really enjoyed. I think something I hadn't realized was a real bonus of that has been that you teach the kids a lot more. So you see the same. I see a lot of my pupils 4 or 5 times a week, same classes. Whereas teachers in other subjects don't necessarily get that same continuity. So I was just drawn to it. It's almost hard to articulate why. In many ways, I'd love to be a DT teacher. That looks great. And the other thing I hadn't realised was, I mean, I teach PE occasionally. So every 2 weeks I teach a lesson of PE, and I've covered various other lessons. So you might start off as a maths teacher, but actually there's one of the exciting things about, I think, coming into education is that there's a lot of different avenues you could pursue. I wouldn't rule out teaching another subject. You know, do you want to go up to sort of leadership roles within subject or in sort of pastoral? I'm now the assistant manager for Duke of Edinburgh at my school and qualified to assess the Duke of Edinburgh expeditions. I'm really enjoying that. And actually, that's the exciting thing, I think, is there's so many different ways you could take the career. Maths was going to be the baseline, but beyond that, I'm not too sure what will happen next.
Great, thank you. And that's almost a nice segue, Francis, for my last question. I mean, that's the Now Teach network, and the Now Teach team are there to support people coming in and choose the subjects they'd like to go through, and then their career progression and how they'd like to, the supports and the challenges and how to overcome it. I just wondered what was your interaction been like with the Now Teach network and the teams that are there to support?
Really good, very easy, and I think there's that natural sort of fit. And I think the video highlighted that it's really easy when you're in a room or a virtual room of other people who've made that same transition. It's really sort of comfortable. I think it's okay to be someone who's at a later stage of life, who's had a successful career elsewhere, who's still finding it tricky. I've been to one in-person event, a few online events with Now Teach, and I'm taking part in a coaching scheme. We've got a leadership coach who's running some sessions, both group and individual coaching sessions. And all of those have been brilliant at just, I think, being a really sort of good safe space to just chat in a way that you might not in the same way. I mean, I was giving one of the other early career teachers at my stage a lift to some training today, and she talked about, she was born in 2001. And, she's a teacher. I still find that, because 2001 feels quite recent now. So yeah, I think there's just something nice about having a kind of cohort and I think there's also at the event I attended in London, the in-person event, it's really interesting to see the Now Teachers who are now in the senior leadership team within their school, and the, I suppose, leadership and management experience and skills they brought, and sort of showing what you can do in terms of applying that in a school setting. So yeah, exciting so far, and definitely I've benefited from it. It has helped shape me into the teacher I am now.
Thank you, Francis. I'll leave you to grab a glass of water, but I'd love to come back and pull on some of those threads and ask you a few more questions. But that's a lovely segue to invite Kate to join us. So Kate is one of our wonderful program and network team that are there to facilitate a number of the different discussions that Francis talked to run those coaching schemes, to run the event activities right the way across the journey through onboarding into teacher training, through teacher training, and then on into early careers. So Kate's been working for Now Teach for several years, former teacher herself, and I think has got a lot of support that she can personally offer, but also this provides a wonderful opportunity for her to talk about the network, which has now blossomed to about 1,300, and will very shortly go above the 1,500 mark as we welcome our next group of Now Teachers to come through. So I'd love to welcome Kate on, and Kate, hand over to you just to talk to our audience about the Now Teach network and what support is available to them.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm Kate, and I'm one of the Now Teach program and network managers. And as Rob sort of mentioned before, Now Teach, I spent 17 years in the secondary classroom, working closely all the way through in teacher training. So I've sort of seen firsthand what it takes to kind of make this transition work. For the last sort of 3 or so years, I've been at Now Teach, supporting career changers through exactly the kind of journey that you're about to embark on. And it means I've spent a lot of time thinking about what happens to people after they've made this decision to change and train to teach. How it actually feels, because actually deciding to do this is one thing, but sort of living, navigating a new institution, a new identity, a new way of being expert and novice all at the same time, it's where the real work is, I think. And it's where Now Teach comes in, because what I want to share with you over the next few minutes is about what support actually looks like in practice from Now Teach, and why we think the community you're joining is one, or you can join, is one of the most valuable things about coming to Now Teach. So the next slide will show that you're in the right place. One of the things we hear a lot from people considering this move is a worry that they'll be starting from scratch, and somehow a career's worth of experience counts for nothing once you're standing in front of the classroom. But actually, in truth, it's the opposite, and you've heard that from Francis tonight. Everything you've built, and your judgment, your ability to manage complexity, your resilience, your people skills, your instinct for when a room needs a different approach. Quite easy with children, they definitely need us to adapt and change to what they're thinking and where they're at, and that's exactly what makes you a different kind of teacher and a valuable one. And so Now Teach exists because we believe the experience matters, and the career changers bring something into schools that I don't think can be replicated. I was a graduate teacher. I trained at 21, and I often say to career change teachers that I speak to every day that I actually wish I wasn't a graduate teacher. I wish I was a career changer, because I think the teacher that I could be now compared to the one I was when I was 21 is completely different. All of that extra experience. So the network is where you'll find others who made that same leap and understand what it feels like from the inside. The questions that sort of don't quite fit in a staff room conversation, or that feel a bit too specific or too vulnerable for your training provider, those are exactly the ones that your cohort, the people that you will join with along this journey, and other members of the network will help with. And what sort of one Now Teacher kind of experiences and figures out, the next one, doesn't have to start from scratch. So our experience is shared. On the next slide, our network offer, it's sort of your needs in your first term of training, for example, are going to be quite different from what you'll need 2 or 3 years into, your teaching career. And the Now Teach network is specifically designed with that in mind. So it's not a one-size-fits-all offer. It doesn't stand still. It evolves alongside you as your confidence grows, your challenges change, and your sense of, what kind of teacher you want to be develops. And as Francis mentioned, as you look at your different stages from being sort of in your training year to in your ECT year and beyond, it changes with you, and the people that you lean on changes with you. In the early stages for you, that might look like sort of reassurance and practical guidance, and the relief of being in a room or a virtual room with people who just sort of get it, who get the decision that you've made. And then later on, it might be more about professional development, peer inspiration, or thinking about the direction of your career. And the point is that you don't outgrow the network. It's built to move with you from your training through to the qualification and beyond. And I think supporting you to recognise and use what you already bring to each stage is what this is all about. And the diagram that you can see on that screen at the moment shows you that, we move and we develop with you as you change and you grow. The final slide is sort of how we support you, and it gives examples of that. So support from Now Teach comes in lots of different forms, because I think, no two people's experience of this transition is the same. So some people need practical help navigating expectations of their school, which can be quite different. As Francis mentioned earlier, one school to another is completely different. Or their training provider, things like timetabling, workload, managing relationships, or simply understanding what's required sort of week to week. And we offer Ask Me Anything sessions, open spaces. Open spaces are virtual sort of open rooms where you can come along and just listen or join in conversations. One-to-one calls with myself and my team, which can be invaluable at points at which you're really wobbling, and there are wobbles. So, leaning into us is really important. And then sort of accessible resources for all of those moments. And others find the psychological shift quite tricky. From expert to novice, it's unexpectedly difficult. The imposter syndrome is genuinely common among Now Teachers, and we take that seriously, with specific sort of sessions and coaching designed to help you through that. And for those thinking about their sort of longer term impact and development, our impact framework, which you will sort of get to know and understand, will give you a shared language to be able to reflect on that, develop and articulate the difference you're making in your schools, because you will have an impact, and it will be a big impact in some cases, and more as you grow. There's also a sort of thread, a strong thread, I think, of peer connection running through everything we do. So our in-person socials, as Francis mentioned, online, virtual, open spaces, and our annual summit 86% of Now teachers say they feel part of that network, and that sense of belonging really matters. And when things go wrong, and sometimes they do, as we know, you won't be left to work on it alone. The fact that 92% of our Now teachers are still teaching a year after qualifying doesn't happen by accident. That is the result of a kind of consistent wraparound support that happens across every stage of your experience. So a bit of a whirlwind snapshot of what Now Teach offers, but it's not just a route into the classroom, but it's a community and support structure that stays with you. And if there's one thing I'd want you to take away, I think, from this, is that you won't be doing it alone if you join Now Teach. There are people who stood exactly where you are now. Francis is one of them. Who had those same questions and those same doubts that you're feeling now, who are still teaching and glad they made that leap. And that's what the network is for. So I'll hand back to Rob, and I think we will have some questions, but more than happy to kind of speak further about any points that anybody might have about the offer and our community and network.
That's wonderful, Kate. Thank you so much. Just a quick call out for I can see there's some great questions that are coming through in that Q&A box, so please do keep them coming. That would be much appreciated. Kate, while I've got you, I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to direct to you. So just taking a step back, Now Teach was founded in 2017. We're a charity that provides support to career changes like Francis and like I'm sure some of you on the call, to transition from their current career and utilise their professional careers experience within secondary school state classrooms, providing something really unique, I suppose, or something different to maybe the graduates that are coming through. So we don't think our Now teachers are better, but we do think there's different, and diversity in the classroom is incredibly important. Kate, just thank you so much for those slides. Really great overview. I just wondered how does the Now Teach support start to complement what the training providers offer? So Francis went through the PGCE route, the postgraduate certificate in education, went through university. There are some routes where you can go straight into a school and then do the qualified teacher status training that you would go through with that. So clearly there's a kind of a clear curriculum that trainees go through. How does the Now Teach support wrap around that? How does it complement what goes on within the training providers?
Yeah, so although the training providers, they are obviously following the teacher standards, everyone's got to meet those in order to qualify. Actually, every sort of training provider does do it fairly differently. And the PGCE is certainly different to the school-based provider route in terms of the different styles that they use in order to get you through QTS. But what we ensure is that we're there as and when those pressure points or those celebrations are needed. So we know those points at which, it gets tough. We know that the dark days in December can be quite tricky, and you're sitting there thinking, what have I done? I could be sat in my office doing exactly what I know I do really well. Why have I made this choice? But all the way through that, we provide touch points at which we reach out, or you can join on Mighty Networks and have a conversation with a fellow Now teacher, or you can see an event and hook up to an event that happens to be, and it's carefully curated, happens to be a very poignant moment for you at the time of your training that we know that you're going to need. And one of the examples of that is in January. You'll probably start hearing lots of your fellow colleagues saying that they've secured positions for September, and the panic sets in as to when should I have that, and should I have a job by now? And we will put in place at that point a reach out touch point moment where we'll say, don't worry, we're here, or congratulations, you've got your job, but here is an event at which you can come along, ask any questions you have about securing your ECT position for September, and why it's so important to get that right school, the right school fit, and working out what it is exactly that you need. So yeah, I think the program offered, the network surrounding you, those touch points are all very carefully curated to kind of follow along with that training provider experience.
Brilliant, thank you. And then I guess before our candidates get there, I've got the wonderful recruitment team that are behind the scenes today that will pick up from expression of interest, and they've got a really good knowledge of that training provider landscape as well, so they can support you in making your application, going through lesson planning that you might need to put together as part of selection assessment, your personal statement, your interview practice. So your Now Teach support is very much around all the way from expressing an interest and starting to think whether you'd like to be a teacher, right the way through to what Francis was describing a little bit earlier on about some of the earlier Now teachers now maybe moving into to senior level positions, or are kind of further along down their teaching career in their teaching journey. So thank you for that, Kate, much appreciated. I was just wondering, what are the common challenges that you find that people come to you with? So one of the things that you mentioned is that one-to-one support. You run the sort of the Ask Me Anything sessions. So what are the common things that that people come to that maybe some of our audience just think about in advance? If you think about this in advance, it might not be such an issue when you join.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few. There are challenges naturally that come as a career changer. And, you know, it might be that you've got an established family that you've got to try and, you know, balance out at the same time. I mean, when I was training, I often tell this story. I lived at home with my parents. I had my dinner on the table as I was writing my lesson plans. We know for career changers that is definitely not the case. So kind of, you know, the pressure points around supporting career changers at that difficult time of you know, workload and balancing family life or dependents, elderly parents, whatever it might look like. That's definitely one that I mentioned earlier, the idea of, you know, that transition between from being an expert and knowing exactly what your day and being, you know, good at your job to feeling like you know nothing. It can be quite an insecure moment. It can feel quite unnerving. So we deliberately position ourselves as a point of contact for that. And we're experts in being able to, you know, talk you through. We've got extra coaches that we will deploy if needed, that will really drill down and support you to get through wobbly moments that might occur because of those things. Imposter syndrome, as I described, very common. Schools are bonkers places. They're strange places. They can feel quite alien for someone who hasn't been used to it. And for many of us, we haven't stepped into a classroom for years, and they can feel and look quite different to when we were there. So that idea that you don't belong, or you shouldn't be here, or you don't know what you're doing is quite apparent. So again, fellow teachers will buddy up. So, you know, somebody might come to me and say, I'm really struggling with this, Kate. I really do need some support. We can talk them through as program and network managers. That support is there from us. But I think, as you've heard from Francis tonight, one of the best things actually is to hear from somebody who's walked through it themselves. So we often buddy people up and we'll say there's a Now Teach network member who's 3 or 4 years down the line. Geographically, they might be in your area, which would be even better because we have plenty of our Now Teachers who meet up for coffee and coffee chats. But if not, you know, a virtual friend is just as important to kind of reach out and get you through those moments that you might need. So the network is what you lean into. The events, the support, the coaching, the resources on Mighty Networks are all there as an added bonus.
That's great. Thanks, Kate. We had Lisa and Mohan were with us last time around, and Lisa was saying that one of the beauties of the network is that she was teaching, I think, her first lesson, and she completely didn't go as was planned. And she just put a note on Mighty Networks, which is our kind of community platform, and said, has anyone ever experienced this? And she said she took about 3 or 4 times to type that out. And she was so glad she did, because literally within sort of, I don't know, an hour or so, there was about 6 or 7 messages. Oh my God, that happened to me as well. And I didn't do it, but then I did this, and then that happened. And she said, actually, you're not alone. There are other people that have come from a whole host of different walks of life or professional experiences that have that passion for teaching, that passion for giving back, passion for their subject and supporting children, that are actually kind of united in that and are going through those different elements. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that position that we sit in, which is that third space, it's perhaps something Lisa couldn't easily have talked to her fellow colleagues about, because naturally they may or may not want to be talking about their successes and challenges, and certainly the schools won't want to hear that. So actually that third space that we provide at Now Teach, the ability to reach out and say, oh, I'm feeling like this, is anyone else feeling like this? And you know, wrap around that, those arms come, and really kind of you feel like you're definitely not alone. But the ability, I think, to be honest, Mohan talks about this quite a lot, the ability to be completely honest in yourself and say, today was rubbish. I don't know why it went wrong, but it was rubbish. And you couldn't easily say that to your training provider. They're the ones that qualify you at the end of the day. And your school are busy. You know, there are plenty of people sort of running past you during the day who don't have time. So, you know, that opportunity to sit and spend some time on Mighty Networks or one-to-one with us or a buddy or coaching is that third space that's so critical, and that we're fortunate to provide.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Kate. So we're 1,300 in that network. I think we've got 36 different industry sectors that are represented across that group. Clearly, Francis was in the Navy. We've got bankers. We've got Ronan was worked in the chemistry industry. We've got driving instructor. I believe we actually had someone who trained as a clown once upon a time. So all walks of life, all different industries, all kind of united in that passion. I believe, Kate, the oldest now teacher that we've got at the moment when they trained was 70. I believe they've recently started to take a bit of a back seat, and now they've reached 75. Average age of a now teacher is actually 48 and maybe going up to 49. So clearly, I think the support that we provide to help you transition into and through your training years really is curated around your journey. So potentially a 70-year-old now teacher wasn't necessarily going to want to go on to be a head teacher or have a long career, but was really focused on providing that value within the classroom. So whether you want to have a long career within teaching and be a teacher for the next 30 years or the next 5 years or the next 10 years or whatever, that support is very much there. But I'm interested. I'm going to invite Francis in to give a perspective on this. But as a career changer in the classroom, Francis, what's the biggest challenge that you've maybe come across? Being a sort of slightly older, and what's the biggest challenge and what's the biggest benefit, do you think, being a career changer in teaching?
I think the biggest challenge, I was looking through the questions that come up. There's perhaps two. I think one, as a career change which feels strange, is going from being really professionally competent at your job and being really very confident in it to being that imposter syndrome. Absolutely. You suddenly realize that first day when you're teaching on your own, this is it. You're a qualified teacher, yet it doesn't necessarily feel like you've got the experience that everyone around you has, that's doing it before. So I think a bit of that, and I think also just sometimes behavior can be challenging, and no matter how senior you were in your previous role, no matter how much you know about what you've done in your previous role, the kids don't care, and they don't know. And I think you will win them over, but you'll only win them over once they get to know you. And you can't walk in as you might have done in a previous job where you come in a new senior role. People know exactly who you are and treat you, ultimately with respect, and that's not necessarily the same in teaching. So those skills of how do you work with other people, get to know them, build relationships that you did in your previous career, you have to do that, but just from a starting point of being the new kid, the new teacher in the school. So I think there's something around that. I think the other bit is, I think the tricky bit for me was in this early career teacher year that I'm in now. Back in September when I started my first proper job in a new school, it was a bit about capacity, and I think it is quite hard work. It's quite busy, because I think across, particularly when you join a new school, there's a lot you're trying to do, whether it's planning lessons, marking, getting to know pupils, building relationships, getting to know your tutor group, and even just understanding where things are in the school. So I think it's kind of good. You only have to go through that really once, that starting off. I feel this coming September is going to be an awful lot easier because I know the school, I know the systems, I've taught hundreds of lessons now. And I think whilst when you change school, there will be some changes. You're never going to be a newly qualified teacher on your first day on your own again. So, I suppose that probably all sort of links into all of the points you talked about the sort of nervousness people have. But it quickly becomes second nature. You talk to other people, you realize it's not just you at all. And I think it's the network, it's the people you talk to, it's the people you can send a message to, or who will call you up and check you're all right. I think that's the bit that gets you through all of that, and you realize that it isn't just you. It is tough, but it's only rewarding because it's tough, if that makes sense. It is worth it.
Yeah. Do you how do you find about I'm always fascinated by the kind of almost the generational interplay that you've got. You're potentially working with someone like Kate who kind of came through as a graduate, and then you're going through as a sort of a trainee. So you've maybe got people that are more experienced teachers, but are much younger than you. You've maybe got a sort of a manager or a leader within the school that maybe is younger than you, and then you've got parents that maybe the same. How does that kind of how does that sort of generational interplay? Is there any challenges that you find with it, or any benefits that you kind of feel that have come from that?
I think you're quite lucky as a career changer. Yeah, I think talking to my sister-in-law who went into teaching at the age of 21, I think her first couple of years in teaching were far tougher for her than it has been for me. I just think you've got a perspective perhaps that you didn't have, well, I wouldn't have had in my early 20s. I don't think I would have been a very good teacher in my early 20s. I wouldn't have considered going into it, I don't think. So I think you've probably got a bit more of a sort of depth of experience that allows you to put a perspective on it. I think it helps because the pupils don't necessarily know you're a new teacher. So they know when you're a trainee and there's another teacher in the room, they work that out. But actually, when you're a new teacher to a school and you're in your 40s, the assumption is that you've been teaching for years. So I think that probably helps. I think it probably helps in terms of interactions with parents. And I think they can probably tell perhaps that I'm a parent as well. And I think that. So I do think there's a whole lot of things that help you. I think it's still tough, but I think it in many ways probably is easier than coming in your 20s. But I've also really enjoyed, it was actually great fun going on to the PGCE, the teacher training last year. And I think I was probably about the sort of, median age. Like we were people at 21, people about 60. So, 40, 41, I was about in the middle of that. And probably a third of them were older than me. I expected to be really old on the course, and I really wasn't. I was, slightly older than average, but actually, so it was really fun. It's great. I've really enjoyed working with a bunch of people in their 20s, hearing people who've come straight from a maths masters, whose maths is phenomenal. I mean, I will never be that good at maths. But yet, their sort of life experience is different to yours. So I found that really fun, and I think I've always enjoyed working with younger people, and found that, to be honest, one of the things that made me move on from my previous career was being often the youngest person in the room and realizing it wasn't necessarily a room I was keen to stay in for too much longer. I really thrived around that environment. Yeah. A long-winded answer. I don't ever know if I answered your question.
No, you did. Absolutely. That was spot on, Francis. Thank you. Do you ever sort of look back wistfully at what you did and sort of think, oh, there are some aspects that I did enjoy in my previous career that are not there anymore, or how are you feeling kind of 18 months in about your decision to change careers?
It's funny, whenever you look on LinkedIn and see your old colleagues or catch up with people who you used to work with, you sort of look back and think, oh, that could still be me. No, I'm really happy. There's bits where you think that is, perhaps I could have gone and done the job, perhaps, but actually no, I'm really happy. And what I may be able to do in the long term, I think, is I hope to bring some of what I used to do in the sort of maritime world into teaching. Now, whether form that exactly takes, there's an assistant head at my school, one of the leadership positions, who focuses on enrichment beyond the curriculum and careers development. And I think that's where I'd really love to end up. I'd love to be able to bring in a bit of a background working in something else, working with young people, helping people identify future sort of pathways. It's really exciting when you talk to 15, 16-year-olds who are doing their GCSEs now, and you say, well, what are you going to do when you leave school? It's really fun. And random kids come up to me who I don't teach, and they say, sir, did you used to be in the Navy? And I say, yeah, I did actually. And they say, well, I'm thinking of joining the Navy. I'm thinking of joining the Army. I want to be an engineer. It's amazing. Word kind of gets around eventually that you did something else first, and that's really fun. So I think one day I hope that my sort of maths teaching strand and the things I've done previously might come together to help young people sort of fulfill their potential with bits of the Duke of Edinburgh and so on in there. So I don't know quite what it'll look like, but so I hope there's a sort of marrying up at one stage, and that kind of had some benefit.
Absolutely. And I guess you've always got that card that certainly my kids always say, I'm not going to use this when I get into the real world. Why am I being taught this? Well, I suppose you've got the card. Well, actually, I can give you a practical example of where you will use this in the real world.
Yeah, they don't like that. Well, yeah, but not exactly like this. Well, yeah, a lot like this. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a bit of that perspective, and I try not to go on too much about my previous career, but I do occasionally mention it or use little examples. And I think just in terms of some of my work with my tutor group, being a tutor is perhaps my favorite bit of the job. It's great fun, and I take quite a lot of liberties with the stuff we do. We do an outside tutor time and let them lead activities. We do a bit of careers sort of work and things. And I've actually really enjoyed that. And I think there's a little bit surprised that the ECT is doing all these things, but the early career teacher, the brand new teachers doing these things. But I quite enjoy. I mean, ultimately, the risks are pretty small. You can get it. I think there's a lot of scope to be yourself, and I'm enjoying exploring some of the boundaries of that, and really sort of building the confidence of my tutor group. So, yeah, I think they quite like it. I think they quite enjoy, the bits that are less academic. One of the challenges is these limited windows. You'd love to spend more time talking with pupils, looking at future career opportunities and discussing the wider world. The time and place for that generally isn't the maths classroom, and that's where perhaps I really enjoy the tutor time, the Duke of Edinburgh things, because you get a chance to talk a bit more deeply with pupils, and help them out.
Thank you, Francis. One more question, then I'm going to invite Kate in with a few. But I just wondered about. So you mentioned you're on a course with someone who just finished their maths masters, and you've had a 10, 15-year career. I don't know specifically what you were doing, but I'm assuming it wasn't necessarily maths day in, day out. So how did you need to get up to speed with the maths curriculum, or how did you reacquaint yourself with the subject? Did you need to do too much to familiarize yourself with it, or kind of reacquaint yourself back with maths content?
Yeah, I think this is perhaps the most sort of overrated fear of people changing career. Honestly, I wouldn't worry about it. Is my sort of experience. I did quite a lot of maths. I dug out some books and bought a few revision guides and did a lot of past papers to get ready for the assessments. I was pretty keen that if I was going to change career and take what it feels like quite a big risk of shifting and putting down your kind of current career and picking something else up, I really want to do it well. So I did that, and actually I was told I didn't have to do the subject knowledge enhancement. So I didn't do that in the end, but that was on offer, and that could have been something I might have done otherwise. But actually, I found the subject knowledge, it comes back to you. And I think you spending time in the classroom, you identify the areas you're not so strong on, you work on those. And the best way of getting good at understanding something is to start teaching it, because you've got to really get into it. So that, whilst I did worry about that, and I think everyone I know who's changed career worried about that, honestly, I don't think that's the biggest worry. I think just being able to roll your sleeves up, get back to the basics, and being comfortable that you're going to be starting out again, that you will fail, that you will have lessons which don't go to plan. I think that's the bigger thing to sort of be prepared for. I think the subject knowledge will come.
Yeah, great, thank you, much appreciated. Kate, I'm going to invite you in for a couple of questions just around some really interesting questions around how the Now Teach support is wrapped around the training officer. So we know, as Francis will testify, that the teaching's busy, you're in early, you've got tutor groups after school, or maybe you've got a Duke of Edinburgh after school, you've got to do your marking in the evenings, you've got your lesson planning. We've heard about the kind of the intensity of that sort of training year. So just a couple of questions, I suppose, if I may. Not very good interview technique, but I'm going to fire a couple at you if that's all right. But just around how that Now Teach offer is kind of timetabled around that kind of training to make sure people can access it. And then how is that tailored to people with different ambitions and different perspectives in terms of where they would like to go? How does that tailor for their own personal career journey?
Yeah, so we always try to ensure that if there are any events or in-person socials, whatever they may be, they are always sort of at a variety of different times. So if we have, for example, our open spaces, that's our virtual online meeting space for anybody to come in. There's no agenda. It's just a matter of coming in and having a chat, and whatever comes out, the conversation comes out. But what we try and do is we try and schedule those so that one might be at 5 o'clock. So it might be that you can join at school, straight from school, from a meeting, or get home and quickly do it then. And then there might be one at 7 o'clock on another on another month. So we do try and make sure that everything is accessible at varying times. We do them during the holidays as well. Getting them right is difficult because we know obviously everyone's busy, everyone's got very different school experiences in terms of when meetings are or when they go on holiday. So we try and do a nice variety that you'll be able to pick and choose what works for you. And then in terms of what was the other part of that? Sorry, Rob, that was the...
I was just thinking, how does the network offer, how is that tailored for people's different journeys? So they might have a specific career direction they want to go into. Francis kind of mentioned that potentially everyone sort of broadening that out and starting to think more about the sort of transferable skills. Others might, I say but want to be a really good or a heavy subject matter expert, or go down the supporting with a careers basis and maybe careers advice, etc. How's that tailored to someone's career journey?
Yeah, brilliant. So what we tend to do with that is we will group people so that conversations are naturally happening, around the kind of areas that people are interested in. However, our impact framework that will come out as you begin sort of your training and through your later years, we certainly don't add any pressure. So there's no commitment whatsoever to complete any work from Now Teach or to attend any certain amount of training. It is entirely optional. But our impact framework allows you to have a look at those different areas that you might want to get involved in. We've had, for example, now teachers who have come into schools and thought, oh gosh, I just don't understand how this or why this school operates in this way. And operational excellence is one of the areas that often now teachers can feed into. And the impact framework will allow them to have ideas around how that can impact, what impact they can have within the school. Or, as Francis mentioned, that career specific sort of advice that might be, and many schools, all schools have to have career advice, and often have somebody positioned in school that has that role, and therefore we would advise and show you how that impact can happen. The joy of Now Teach is that you already have the skills to have that impact in whatever area you want to, whether that is to climb that ladder and become that assistant head teacher or head teacher, or that you just want to have that real impact on individuals in your classroom day in, day out. My husband's been teaching maths for 25 years. He's climbed the ladder and come back down again, because actually what he missed when he climbed the ladder was not having the impact in the classroom. So there is that variety, and it might change as you sort of progress through. And we always obviously have that support around us, whether it's within the network and talking to each other, or the impact framework, to really kind of support you to make those decisions.
That's great, Kate. And just to build on that slightly, if I may, you and colleagues put together, I think, a wonderful kind of pre-start module that our Now teachers that are coming in 26 can benefit from, which is self-directed, asynchronous. You do it online. You've got video content you can look through, different check-ins with the team. And the beauty, I suppose, of the network is that it was co-authored by the network for Now teachers that are coming through. So it's got that complete career change lens, married with the teaching expertise and the educational development expertise within the team, to make sure that there's a really nice package of support and work that people can engage with in a variety of different ways, whether that's watching videos, whether that's doing some reading in their own time, whether that's engaging in a variety of different forums. And a similar way with the Net Impact Framework, right? That lots of research with our 1,300 strong network. What kind of things are you doing? What kind of support would you need? What are examples of great practice? And then being able to share them back with prospective candidates that are coming in to support them on their journey and how they can apply their skills, whether that's, to your point, in an operations zone. We've got people, Brian in Norfolk, really interesting guys. Who used to be an accountant, has really started to look at how the school's finances comes into play and then started to work. Francis mentioned careers guidance, but we've got some really great career guidance professionals that are coming through the network. Those that want working with special educational needs, which I think is a fascinating area, expanding area that we've got more support around. And those that have real depth and interest in subjects and sort of the research behind it. So there's so many different ways that, yes, it's us. We've recruited 1,300, we've supported 1,300 and at a higher retention rate than is across the average in the sector. But also having that network of 1,300 minds and brains and to feed back into it has really worked nicely, I think. So
yeah, and I think the joy of both of those things, the Start Strong modules, which are really geared to kind of preparing you for what September looks like, but it doesn't have to be done before September. It can be picked up as you go through. There might be a module on, sort of managing your well-being, that kind of sense of, what am I doing and how do I manage this? that you can pick it and dip in and out of them as you need to. And the impact framework is designed for the same thing. It doesn't need to be added to the workload. We know teachers, whether they're qualifying or 4 or 5 years down the line qualified, it is a busy job. But it's there to kind of support as and when you need it, and you dip in and out of those at the right time. If someone asks you what impact are you having, and you go to that impact framework and have a look and say, well, actually I'm doing these things, and actually it's a really lovely reassurance that you are having that impact in school, because sometimes now teachers get frustrated that they don't see the impact they're having, and actually initially you might not see that impact because what you're trying to do is learn how to teach, essentially. So that has to be done first, and eventually you start thinking, oh, that conversation with that student about being in the Navy, actually had a real impact. And it might be tiny moments, but they're moments worth recording and noting and reminding yourself of what you're doing.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kate. Much appreciated. And thank you for your contribution this evening, Kate. It's great. It's great hearing about it. I've heard it many times before, but it just makes me smile every time. So thank you for that. Francis, I'm going to direct the last question to you before I close with a quick slide. But Francis, for our prospective audience that are potentially going to come into teaching over the next year or so, what is your one piece of advice that you would give to them before embarking on their journey?
I think it comes back to the bit I mentioned earlier, which is just talk to as many people as you can. Friends of friends, colleagues, people who've changed into teaching, people who are teachers, people who have been teachers, people who work in tutoring, people who've got kids at local schools, people who've done the PGCE or the training route that you're looking at. I think the more people you talk to, the better. Through Now Teach, just get, as I say, when I got to the point where I felt I'd heard the same thing from most people, I felt like I understood it. And I think for me, that was really reassuring in getting a measure of it. So just talk to everyone you can. Reach out to me. I don't know quite how, but I'm very happy to take questions via the Now Teach team. And I think eventually you get to the point where you feel you've got the information, then you can make decisions about how you take it forward and enjoy it. Good luck.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And thank you so much for giving up your evening. It's much appreciated. And that's a lovely little segue just to close with one quick slide. So thank you to Kate and Francis for coming on this evening. We will in a few moments just give you our contact details. So I just wanted to clarify what our kind of offer is and how Now Teach, the charity Now Teach, will be able to support you. So firstly, just to clarify, we don't run a teacher training program. We support career changers to transition into teaching and work with you throughout your career as a teacher. You'll see a feedback form that's just popped up. So as I'm just going through these last few points, please do take a few moments to complete. We support transition you into teaching and through teaching. So the support will be there, as Kate outlined and as Francis sort of alluded to, from the network, from the Now Teach team, to take you through your education journey. That network is incredibly powerful to contribute to benefit from, and to work your way through your transition into teaching, your application processes, your onboarding, and through ITT into your through ITT, initial teacher training, then into your early careers teaching years, and then beyond. So that network is really important, is really, really forceful. And what we want to do is to provide you with the support to be the best teacher that you possibly can be, and those students that you're teaching will benefit from you. So we hopefully enable you to make a smooth transition into teaching, enable you to anticipate and address those common challenges that may come up, connect you with that vibrant network of career changers, and equip you to make the greatest impact on your pupils, the school, and society. So please do register. The first step with all of these things, if you haven't already, express an interest. There's a form on our website. You would have seen Rachel's number would come up, and you'll get that in an email that will follow through. So get in touch with us, and would love to be able to support you on your transition into teaching. Much unlike many of my meetings that I tend to run, but we've actually managed to finish on time. So I'm not gonna waffle on. I'm going to conclude there, and just to say thank you so much. We'd love to hear from you. Please, if we haven't answered any of your questions, please do get in touch. You've got our email address. Please do express an interest. And all the best. Thank you to Kate. Thank you to the Now Teach team. Thank you to Francis. And I wish you a lovely rest of the evening. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.